see. Still the wrong button set. Hello! Back to the trial. How short this part is. Gina, how are you holding up? I'm starting to feel quite warmly towards her frequently cold shoulders now.
Ginny! Are you alright? Why aren't you saying anything? What's the point, eh? Why go to all the trouble and fight so hard for the likes of me? What? Well, you saw it, that picture.
What picture?
You mean this? The photograph taken by Hurley's red-handed recorder. Well, I didn't think it would have captured a scene like that's for sure. It's hopeless. Anyone who sees that's gonna think I did it, ain't they?
Well, I won't pretend it wasn't a bit of a shock when the prosecution first presented it to the court.
Surely you've got to have their doubts about me now. You can't still think I'm innocent.
Of course I can.
Jeannie, why didn't you talk to us? Tell us what really happened that night. Bruno's cleverly managed to piece together a lot of new information, but still, we'd really like to hear it from you. Alright then. It was after we had that dinner together at your place, right, Iris? Then we all had a chat up in your office, didn't we?
Yes, I remember.
After that, I just couldn't get to sleep. So I slipped out and went down to the street to the 2-1, to Windybank's place. I had to know.
If Iris' story was there or not, the Hound of the Baskervilles.
I don't know what it's about or nothing. But if you ask me, there's something in it that Sholmes don't like. Something what he don't want people reading. So that's why he lied to Iris about sticking it in lug with Windybanks for safekeeping. At least, that's what I thought at the time.
So you broke into Windybanks?
I just had to know if it was there or not. I mean, I had no idea all of that was going to kick off, did I? I struck the lock and snuck inside. It was dark as you like in there. So I gave the oil lamp on the counter a bit of wick, and that's when...
What do you think you're doing?
I nearly died at it, and next thing I knew... I grabbed the gun off the counter and was waving it in the air like, I don't know what.
Ah, you're that girl who was in here this afternoon. I didn't think pickpockets went in for armed robbery.
The mental script. Have you got it here? Did Sholmes leave a load of papers with you? A story?
I beg your pardon?
The Hound of the something or other. If it's here, I want to see it.
I'm sorry, young lady, but I'd sooner die than relinquish an article belonging to one of my customers.
I don't want it. What would I do with it anyway? I just want to see it's here. That's all.
Oh, you want to see it, do you?
I want to know if Sholmes really pawned it here or not. Please, just let me see it and I'll go.
Oh, Very well then. But for pity's sake, stop waving my gun around, would you?
So then the old cove unlocked the storeroom door and we both went inside. And it was there all right, the mental script. Sholmes weren't lying after all. You did all that just to check for me, Ginny? Anyway, then there was a bit of a kick-up out in the main bit of the shop.
The skulking brothers arriving on the scene, yes.
What was that noise? Someone's broken in.
Dear me, is there some burglars' convention here tonight that I don't know about?
I think I forgot to shut the door behind me. Sorry.
I'd better go and take care of it. Could I possibly have my gun back?
Oh, well, I'll come with you and...
No, don't be foolish, young girl. You must stay right here. Don't leave this room under any circumstances.
And with that, he took the gun out of my hands and walked back out into the shop. I hung back in the storeroom like he said, straining my ears in the dark to hear what was going on. Sounded like they got into a bit of a scrap. Started to think I should help, see? So I was just about to go out to the storeroom myself when... I had a couple of shots go off. 2, I think. Almost at the same time. And then there he was, right at my feet, lying face down on the floor. I was right next to the storeroom door, so I slammed it shut and locked it quick as you like.
Because you thought whoever had shot Mr. Windybank might come for you.
Yeah, so I went to grab the old cove's gun. I figured I'd put up a fight at least. When I got a better look at him, I knew. Windybank was a goner. I felt funny in my head all of a sudden, kinda dizzy. After that, I don't remember nothing.
That must be when you passed out, Gina.
If I hadn't done what I'd done, the old cove might still be alive.
Did you tell the police everything you just told us?
Of course I did, but they didn't believe a word of it, did they? All they said was, if I kept telling lies, it'd make things even worse for me. It'll be alright, Ginny. Don't worry. Just stay strong a little longer. Bruno's about to put the real culprit through the mill. That cove what was there in the afternoon. That Egbert Benedict. I still remember how he looked at me, like I was nothing. He was there that night.
We don't know his real name yet, but I'm convinced that he's involved somehow. Anyway, thank you for telling us what happened, Gina. I appreciate your honesty.
You what? You can leave it all in Runo's capable hands now, Ginny. Mr. Naruodo.
Yes?
How come you trust me? I don't get it. I mean, have you forgotten what happened here before? Come on, it was only 2 months ago. Me and McGilded, we told you a whole pack of lies. And you got the bog trotter off with him, even though he was a killer.
No, I could never forget that.
Oh.
I did what I thought was best at the time. But the pain of that error of judgment doesn't get any easier to bear.
Still, don't forget that I also made you a promise. I told you that I'd be on your side to the bitter end, no matter what. But what if I'm lying? You could be working to get another killer off the hook, for all you know. I was once in your position, Gina. I was the accused in a trial. You were? Before I left Japan, I was accused of murder. As strange as it might sound, the circumstances of the crime were pretty damning. I was sure that no one would believe it wasn't me who'd done it. Oh, Bruno. There was one person who stood up for me, who believed in me, and was prepared to defend me. My best friend. Ryunosuke, no one believes in you more than I do. Leave this to me. All you need to do is put your faith in me and I'll do the rest. I was so happy I cried. And even then, somewhere inside me I couldn't help thinking, surely he doesn't really believe in me. Not completely. But I was wrong. As soon as my trial began, it was obvious that he had an absolute, unwavering belief in me. And in turn, I developed an absolute, unwavering belief in him. Since then, I came to realize, if you want someone to believe in you, you have to believe in the other person first. What are you saying? I promise you, Gina, that no matter what happens, I'll keep believing in you. So you don't need to worry. I won't let you down. Even though I'm a diver and a no good liar? You're not like me gilded. I know that. Huh? That's right. You're our friend, Ginny. Iris. We know you better than you think. And we've come to the conclusion that you're someone we can trust. Yes. That's really all we need to know. Exactly. Mr. Naruto, I...
Defendant Gina Lestrade and a legal representative. Court proceedings are about to resume. Please head into the courtroom immediately.
Yes, of course. Thank you. I've been both a defendant and a defending lawyer in my time, so I knew only too well just how hard it was to put all your faith in another. But I also knew just how hard it was to bear the burden of another putting all their faith in you. And this is it at last, the final chapter, the final battle. Wish me luck, Sasato-san. I hope you're watching over me too, partner.
I hereby call this court to order as we resume the trial of Miss Gina Lestrade. Lord Van Zeeks, have you successfully subpoenaed the witness? The subpoena was delivered to the communications station where the man works immediately, my lord. However, the heavy rain has delayed the arrival of his carriage, it would seem. I see. Then let us turn our attention to Inspector Gregson's presses of the case heard by the court this morning. The glare in the mission of the third bullet in your report is a serious blunder, Inspector. Yes, I can only apologize, my lord. And although the defense's chemical analysis of the blood at the scene makes for a compelling argument, I cannot permit such untried methods to be used as evidence in my courtroom.
It's a big mistake to cross Hurley and me. A very big mistake.
My lord! The subpoenaed witness has just arrived in the building. Thank you, officer. Show him to the stand without delay.
Mr. Eggert Benedict. Didn't expect to be crossing paths with him again so soon. And certainly not like this.
Thank you for complying with the court's subpoena at such short notice, sir. But of course, my lord. As an upstanding member of London society, it is my pleasure to oblige. Now, kindly state your name and occupation for the record. Ashley Graydon, Communications Officer.
Mr. Graydon and I both work at London Central Communications Station.
Now, perhaps somebody would kindly explain what all this is about. You were appraised of the situation by the court, officer, on your way here, I presume? Yes, I was. Something to do with a murder that took place at a pawnbroker's on Baker Street. And some nonsense about me having been there on the night in question. That is the accusation indeed. This really is beyond a joke, you know. Very well. Without further delay, the court will hear your testimony now, Mr. Graydon. You will respond to the accusation made against you under oath. Gladly, my lord. Gladly. Naturally, I have occasion to make use of pawnbroking services from time to time. But are you seriously suggesting I colluded with these thugs to break into the place on the night of the murder? I have no intention of admitting to such an outrageous accusation, even if certain parties here present claim that my blood was found at the scene. Some Sacramouche detective's homebrewed tincture can hardly be taken as a serious evidence. So, you deny the accusation completely, do you? I must say, I am dismayed. The highest court in the land to be swayed by this self-professed detective's toy. It was the will of the jury, and our great British justice system demands that the jury's will is upheld. Then it would seem we have the misfortune of a most inept assembly of jurors today. By golly! How long am I expected to be detained here? If, following the defense's cross-examination, your involvement in this matter has not been established, you will be free to leave immediately. Good. Then I shall be away in time for afternoon tea. Some small consolation at least. It does not hold up Mr. Graydon any longer than necessary. Counsel, proceed with the cross-examination.
So, we'll meet again, Mr. Eggert Benedict. Or is it Mr. Graydon?
My apologies. You are?
Ryunosuke Naruhodo, defense lawyer. We have met.
If you say so. Ashley Graydon. Enchante. So. I trust we can conclude this quickly. Ugh, but I'm not holding your flashy hat while we do.
Hold it!
Yes, we even met in the very pawnbrokery where the crime took place on the afternoon of the day in question. Though, of course, you introduced yourself by a different name at the time. It was Mr. Eggert Benedict, I believe. Tell me, what made you... The witness is here to testify about events that took place that night. He is under no obligation to answer such unrelated questions. You can't be serious. Thank you, because I certainly do not feel inclined to answer such an inappropriate question. So he's going to be evasive, is he? In an effort not to give anything away. This could be tricky.
Hold it!
Have you seen these two men before? This pair? No, I don't associate with criminals. That's said by a man who introduced himself as Eggert Benedict. I'd like to know who I have to thank for this. Who made this outlandish accusation against me? The young lawyer there in the black. This is a farce. Whose idea was it to permit an outsider to work in a British court anyway? Well, needless to say...
Hold it!
Where were you at around 1 in the morning on the night in question, sir? That is past the hour at which I would normally retire. Certainly. I was not in the company of these rapscallions. You're able to prove that?
Objection!
Listen carefully, my learned Nipponese friend. Well, you appear to be under a gross misapprehension on this point. What do you mean? The witness maintains he was not at the scene of the crime. He has no obligation to prove his absence. If your accusation is that the witness was present at the scene, the obligation lies with you to prove your assertion. You will fulfill that obligation before putting any more unreasonable questions to the witness. Fucking poser. A silent victory wiggle. Thanks.
Hold it!
Blood was found at the scene of the crime. There's no question of that. Mr. Sholmes' chemical analysis has positively identified the substance as such. But I am not the only human to have blood running through my veins, am I? How can you be sure that blood is mine? It could equally be the blood of one of these two miscreants. Every individual's blood has a slightly different composition, it seems. Mr. Sholmes' chemical is able to differentiate. Spare me the science lesson. Who is this Sholmes character, anyway? Oh, wait. I assumed all Londoners would know the name. He's a renowned detective. So even you are unable to bring yourself to say great detective? A great detective, you say? Now we're in the realm of fairy tales, are we?
Excuse me!
Do you have something to say about that, Mr. Skulkin? What? Me? No, the Mr. Skulkin next to you. Right, I've had it up to here with this. How many times have I got to tell you? Yes, I know, you're not Big Bruv Skulky. Mr. Nash Skulkin. Huh? God blimey, Governor! You what? Is it not the case that when Mr. Graydon just spoke, a thought went through your mind? Would you care to share that thought with the court? My thoughts? I don't have none of them. It must have been him.
You what?
Mr. Nash Skulkin, answer the question, please. What went through your mind when Mr. Graydon just spoke? Nothing. Honest, nothing. I was just thinking, if he waves his arms around like that much more, he'll open up the wound again, that's all. Hi, Beaker. What wound? Where he took the bullet, of course. It was only 2 days ago. He ain't gonna be healed up yet. So I was, well, you know, I was worrying for him and, well, bells. Mr. Graydon, did you hear that? What? Your comrade is worried about you, it seems. On account of your injured arm. My lord. Yes, Mr. Graydon. I have no idea what these two wretches are talking about. Certainly I shouldn't be expected to answer anything in relation to their mindless insinuations. We know that someone other than the victim was hit by a bullet at the scene of the crime 2 nights ago. From the height of the bullet hole in the wall, that person was likely hit in the upper arm or thereabouts. Perhaps you'd allow a court official to examine your arm, sir. The left arm that you're currently clasping with your right hand as if in pain. No, I refuse. You will show no evidence whatsoever that links me to these common thieves. Accordingly, I am not obliged to permit any such invasion of my privacy. As I've already said, I am completely uninvolved in all this. I've never had anything to do with the pawnbrokery where this fellow was killed whatsoever. I take offence at the insinuation that I was in any way involved. You claim to have had nothing whatsoever to do with Mr. Windybank's pawnbrokery. My lord, the defence would like that last statement to be added to Mr. Graydon's formal testimony. Very well, counsel. Continue with your testimony, Mr. Grade. The bottom line is, I've never had anything to do with the pawnbroking establishment where the man was killed.
Hold it!
Never had anything to do with it?
You forget that I was there, Mr. Graydon, on the very afternoon of the incident. Obviously, I am not a complete stranger to the pawnbrokers. I'm currently on the lookout for an armchair to furnish my study.
Objection!
No, you were there to redeem an article. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Excuse me!
Do you have something to add, Inspector?
Huh? Come again, Sunshine?
You were there too, in fact, weren't you, Inspector? That afternoon.
Well, yes, I do remember meeting yourself in the pawnbrokers that afternoon. You, your young Japanese assistant, and the accused were all present, as I recall.
And at that time, this witness, Mr. Graydon, was trying to acquire a particular article.
Well now. I'm afraid I don't remember too clearly.
What? But you must.
I'm not going to lie and pretend I don't remember something that I don't.
What's going on here? Gregsy showed us a picture before, didn't he? You know, from the cameras that Hurley installed in Windybanks.
Yes, of course. Indeed, and the gentleman pictured bears a striking resemblance to the witness, I must say.
Exactly, which proves that Mr. Graydon was in the shop on the afternoon in question.
At no point have I denied that fact. I merely entered the shop to peruse the articles on sale and have a word with the broker. Nothing more.
This makes no sense. I understand why Mr. Graydon might be trying to cover his tracks. But why would Gregson be trying to avoid giving testimony about what happened? So that's all he's going to say on the matter, is it? What do you think, Reno? I think he has no intention of telling us anything. He's well aware that the less he says, the less chance he has of giving himself away. The complete opposite of Hurley, then. He seems to think that the more he says, the better. Well, at least I managed to prise a little information from these witnesses' lips. Well, thanks to the Skulking brothers. Yes, they were the key to it after all. So he says he had nothing to do with Windybanks. Well, we know that's not true. Perhaps now would be a good time to have a proper look through the court record. Good idea. You never know what tiny scrap of information will become a valuable weapon.
Objection!
Have you ever seen this disc before, Mr. Graydon?
Why? Is it supposed to mean something?
This disc was, until the day of the murder, in pawn in Mr. Windybank's shop. It was redeemed by the defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade, that afternoon. However, somebody mysteriously appeared to try to take it from her. And that somebody was you, of course. Wasn't it, Mr. Graydon?
As I have reiterated numerous times now, you are mistaken. That was not me. I've never seen that disc before in my life.
It may have escaped your notice, but there is a small smear of blood on the disc.
Ah, yes. Resulting from an abrasion of the thumb, perhaps.
That's right. The surface of the disc is covered in hundreds of tiny metal bumps. In the skirmish to acquire the disc, the thumb of the person who tried to take it suffered minor lacerations. So, while the disc bears the remnants of that skirmish in the form of this smear of blood, the thumb of the person in question must bear the remnants also, in the form of a scratch.
Good gracious! Indeed it must!
Mr. Graydon, you refused to allow the court officer to examine your arm before. Are you now going to refuse to allow us to examine your thumb? Because I have no doubt that it bears a small scratch consistent with the smear of blood on this disc.
Well, well. It would seem I underestimated you. What is the meaning of this?
So you admit it now. You admit you have a scratch on your thumb from when you attempted to take the disc from the defendant.
Order! Order! Well, Mr. Graydon. It would appear there has been something of a misunderstanding here. I did not attempt to take the disc, as you put it. No, quite the reverse.
What are you trying to say?
It's really quite simple, you see. The disc was mine from the outset. Is there some crime in taking an item that you own out of a pawn?
What?
It would seem, Mr. Graydon, that in this piece of evidence my learned friend has established a link between yourself and the incident. Accordingly, you will tell the court everything you know about this disc now. As you wish. Though I'm quite sure it has nothing whatsoever to do with the pawnbroker's murder. There's a note on the disc saying, "For McGilded," but the item belongs to me. The redemption ticket was stolen from me by the accused, that filthy guttling on the day in question. I proceeded at once to the shop in order to explain my situation and redeem my article. In the end, of course, the disc was taken by the police. In other words, I had absolutely no reason to break into the shop later that same night.
Did I hear you correctly, sir? McGill, did you say? The famous London philanthropist? Who perished in this very courtroom 2 months ago after being acquitted of a distinctly messy murder?
Yes, my lord. The one and the same.
Good lord. Mr. Graydon. Are you saying that Mr. McGill and yourself were acquainted?
Yes, that's correct.
Order! Well, I certainly didn't expect to hear that name uttered here in my courtroom again.
According to what Gina told us, this disc was placed in pawn on that fateful night 2 months ago. McGilded himself gave instructions to deposit it at Windybanks.
It's funny that Mr. Graydon here is claiming that this belongs to him then, isn't it?
In all likelihood, he's lying. So he appeared that afternoon at Windybanks in order to get his hands on McGilded's disc for some reason.
Counsel, you will commence your cross-examination, please.
Hold it!
Would you care to explain how this belongs to you? As you will observe, a communications officer such as myself commands a fine salary.
You are certainly exquisitely dressed, sir.
So you see, I have little need to make use of the services provided by the pawnbrokery trade. However, I did once find myself in difficulties having misplaced my purse whilst on an errand. Which is why I pawned my fine black overcoat to the broker in question. You claim that was your overcoat? Obviously, and in my haste I clean forgot that the music box disc was in its pocket. And swore McGilded. I am a collector of rare and unusual music box music. I first met Mr. McGilded at a gentleman's club in the city and was interested to discover that he shared my penchant in that area.
So, the disc in question...
It's a pre-production sample. I promised to let Mr. McGilded hear it. But then you forgot that it was in the pocket of the overcoat you were forced to pawn. Yes, exactly.
Gina didn't mention any of that in her testimony 2 months ago, did she?
No, because McGilded had threatened her to keep her mouth shut. Which means that if we dig too deeply here, it's going to expose Gina's perjury.
Oh dear, this is complicated, isn't it?
Let's leave it alone for the time being.
Hold it!
So you're saying that Miss Lestrade lifted the ticket from your pocket or bag? That's right, despite being mindful of danger when walking in the insidious areas of her kind frequent.
Objection!
Miss Lestrade did no such thing. Well, of course she would take that stance, but the girl is a regular offender. You came to the pawnbrokery that day prepared with all the information you needed to identify the defendant. You were looking for her, that's what brought you to Windybanks. To get your hands on Mr. McGilded's disc.
Objection!
My learned friend is a veritable font of nonsense. Nonsense?
I concur with the prosecution. Consul, you will refrain from conjecturing in this way. Is that clear?
Yes, my lord. Then I will continue with my testimony. For what possible use it can be.
Hold it!
Had you ever been to Windybanks before? Only once, for the purpose of pawning something, but like many I enjoyed browsing in such establishments. So, when you noticed that the pickpocket had taken your ticket, you chased after her, is that correct? Yes, that's right. I didn't notice at first, of course, such is the art of the pickpurse. But when I did, I headed to the pawnbroker at once, in order to reclaim my coat before the thief could. I was merely trying to recover what was rightfully mine in the first place. He can say what he likes because he knows we have no evidence to contradict him on this.
Hold it!
Yes, it was taken by Inspector Gregson here, wasn't it? That's right. This was the very man. Apparently the police are collecting anything that has a connection to Mr. McGilder as evidence.
Excuse me!
Is something wrong, Inspector?
What did you mean?
The last remark Mr. Graydon made in his testimony seemed to trouble you in some way.
No, it didn't. It's nothing. Leave it alone.
Let me ask you this, Inspector. Why is Scotland Yard gathering Mr. McGilder's possessions?
No, I can't tell you something like that, Sunshine.
What is it, Inspector? Investigating secrets?
Yes, exactly. You should know all about that.
Magnus McGilded, who died so unexpectedly after his trial 2 months ago. A man renowned throughout the capital for his great contributions to public life, yet he had a dark side too.
What are you going on with this? Where are you going with this, Van Zeeks?
I suppose the police are dealing with the aftermath of his nefarious activities, are they?
That's enough. Coppers like me have duties to carry out that we're not at liberty to talk about. That's all you need to know.
Duties conferred by Lord Strongheart, I presume. The Lord Chief Justice appears to have great faith in you, Inspector.
The bottom line is, if you want to get more out of me, you're going to need Lord Strongheart's paw print first.
What's all this about? It's like there's something going on between Gregson and Lord Van Zeeks here.
Well, it would appear that the Inspector has revealed all he is at liberty to reveal. Mr. Graydon, let us return to your testimony.
Gladly, my lord.
Hold it!
Then perhaps you've seen something of value among the forfeited items? No, not at all. Oh. A valuer was brought in by the police to assess everything in the shop. Without exception, every article on the shelves was common or garden bric-a-brac. In that case, it's clear. You broke into the shop later that day in order to recover Mr. McGilded's disc. Have you not been listening, man? Even if I had wanted to recover the disc, you may recall that it had been seized by the police that afternoon. There was no more in the shop that night than I. As I keep saying, I simply had no reason to break in. So there was nothing of McGilder's left in the shop that night. Nothing this man might have been after.
Wonder if that's really true. Bruno, if you have some evidence, then let him have it. I'm dying to see that irritatingly assured expression of his crumble.
Gilded slipped the disc into his coat pocket and had it deposited at Windybanks. Then when he realised he was going to be arrested on suspicion of the omnibus murder, he threatened Gina and forced her to take the redemption ticket.
There's no doubt about it. That witness is lying through his pearly white teeth.
Police were obviously after anything left behind by McGilded as well. That's why Inspector Gregson ended up taking the disc into custody that day.
Grexy's being very strange about all this.
Must be a reason for that, I'm sure. I just don't know what it is. But now I need to focus on exposing the fact that Mr. Graydon is lying in his testimony.
Objection!
This disc was deposited at Mr. Windybanks on Magnus McGilded's instructions. You knew that, and you went there with the intention of obtaining it for yourself.
Objection!
Conjecture again, and in any case, the disc was taken into custody by the police that afternoon. The witness had no reason to visit the pawnbrokery again that night.
Objection!
Sorry, my learned friend, but that's not true. What? Mr. McGilded had another article in pawn at Windybanks, as this second pawnbroker's ticket proves. Ugh. There were 2 articles belonging to Mr. McGilded in Windybanks pawnbrokery, and the reason he broke into the shop that night was to recover the second one. Together with your 2 accomplices, the Skulkin brothers.
Ah! This is the second ticket, is it?
What had the man deposited? The article description reads, 1 small box.
A rather vague description, it seems to me.
Are you suggesting that I broke into the pawnbrokery with these clowns in order to steal some trinket box? I believe there are adequate grounds to suspect that you did. This is absurd. Why on earth would I do such a thing? Once the article had been forfeited, I could simply walk into the shop and purchase it. There would be absolutely no need for me to resort to theft. That's a good point.
Indeed. The witness makes a solid argument.
So that means that for some reason, this Graydon fella needed the small box that very night, does it?
Objection!
It's time to put an end to this nonsense, my lord.
Could you be a little less cryptic, Lord Van Zieks?
I do aim to ruin my learned friend's argument, but the truth is quite incontrovertible. On the night in question, no small box was taken from the Windybanks pawnbrokery. And rest assured, the prosecution can prove it. What?
Good gracious!
Inspector, show the photographic prints to the court, if you please.
Yes, sir.
What prints?
Well, these prints were taken from one of the detective's security cameras.
Hurley's red-handed recorders again.
As previously explained, using this plan of the shop layout, the victim's establishment was furnished with automatic cameras in 2 locations. One was set up to capture the counter where Mr. Windybank received his customers, and the other was set to capture the shelves on which the articles were placed for sale once forfeited.
According to the information on this ticket, a gilded small box had been forfeited already. 2 days before the incident at 9 PM on 13th of April, to be precise.
which means it would have been on the shelves of the four fitted items on the in the shop front. Now, what I have here is a print taken by one of the cameras about 2 hours before the incident. And that'll be 11 PM on 15th of April. The victim certainly had a very full shop, it would appear. And then here we have another print. This one was taken about 2 hours after the incident. I see. So we have two pictures to compare. Oh, I must say that placing them side by side leaves me cold. Dear me, that's starting to make my head ache. Obviously, at Scotland Yard we considered theft as one possible motive in this case. We explored the possibility that something had been taken in addition to the victim's life. So your men have already compared these two prints thoroughly, Inspector? Yes, sir. We counted every single item in each of these two photographic prints. And the Yard's conclusion is that exactly the same number are present in both. In other words, nothing was taken from the pawnbrokery on the night in question. And my learned friend's assertion is nothing more than a hopeful fantasy. Ah! I don't believe it. I could have just shown that he'd stolen McGilded's pawn box. I might have been able to break him down at last.
You know what, Bruno? I've been thinking. I wonder if these two photographs really are exactly the same.
What? So, counsel, in the light of the evidence put forward by the prosecution, what is your position? It seems that in fact on the night in question nothing was stolen from the victim's establishment. Do you accept the prosecution's assertion?
Don't know. Could there be some hidden discrepancy in these two photographic prints somewhere?
Yep.
Before I give my answer, my lord, I'd like to try something if I may.
Try something? What do you mean, counsel?
I need to use a certain piece of evidence from the court record to identify the discrepancy.
I'm not entirely sure I follow. Which piece of evidence do you intend to use to help you identify a discrepancy between the two prints?
Take that!
I'd like to use this device, my lord, to view the two prints stereoscopically. Oh! Yes, you've caught the bug at last! You can't resist it, can you? You got the cross-eyed compulsion! Juror number 3, what a surprise. Come on, Reno. Let's put the pictures in place and see what this wonderful contraption shows us. There we go. Now, look through the eyepiece. Wasn't sure at first, but there is a clear discrepancy between these two prints.
What? You must identify the location in question for the court, counsel. Indicate the precise location of the discrepancy of which you speak.
It's right there, isn't it?
Take that!
Granted, these two prints are almost identical. However, there is one minor discrepancy between them.
What?
When you view the two pictures stereoscopically, a single area stands out as being different,
the location of this small box. Let me... Wait! Unbelievable!
By Jove, you're right. How extraordinary.
What this tells us is very simple. Mr. McGildy's small box was indeed not stolen from Windybanks on the night in question. However, there can be no doubt that somebody picked up this particular box and then returned it to its place on the shelves.
Are you suggesting that the small box originally deposited by Mr. McGildy is in fact?
Yes, the very same small box I just identified in those photographic prints.
Objection!
Mindless guesswork. What if it was? So a box was moved on the shelf. Nothing was stolen. Which means, quite simply, that nothing has changed. That may be true, but... Alright. McGilded's box wasn't stolen then. Doesn't the fact that it was moved like that change things? I believe this changes everything about the case. How can that possibly be? The crucial point is the fact that what was moved was a small box. In other words, we have to consider what might have been inside that box.
What are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that we need to examine that box as soon as possible. A vital piece of evidence is sitting on the shelves at Windybanks as we speak.
Objection!
That won't be necessary. Some little box belonging to a man who died 2 months ago can't possibly be relevant to this trial. The court does not uphold your objection, Lord Van Zieks. Bailiff, arrange for an officer to go to Baker Street at once. Obtain the small box in question and bring it back here for further examination. We should have a report within half an hour. I think perhaps we should recess for a short while until the evidence is brought forth.
To be hoodwinked by such a farce. Disappointing.
I beg your pardon, Lord Van Zieks.
This is nothing but a smokescreen. A Nipponese speciality, it would seem. What are you trying to say? My learned friend has persisted with the same line of reasoning from the very beginning. That this witness's intent was to steal an article belonging to Mr. McGildet from the pawnbrokery. Yet, common sense tells us that none of the articles have value enough to be worth stealing in the first place. Exactly. It would be beyond absurd to break into a place for the purpose of stealing such commonplace property. If your lordship recalls, Mr. McGildet perished 2 months ago, immediately after the conclusion of his trial. A trial in which he was found not guilty. A trial in which it was established he was the upstanding member of society his reputation implied, in fact. So I propose a toast to my learned friend and his most insightful defense. The articles of this upstanding member of society pawned were entirely ordinary. A black overcoat just happened to have a music box disc in one of its pockets and a small box. I assure you, I would except even if the man... I assure you, I wouldn't accept even if the man tried to make a gift of such things to me.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense.
Not as if it was gold or jewels, is it? Oh, goodness knows Mr. Yoda was rich enough. But you can't deposit cash at a pawnbroker.
The prosecution's argument is undeniably compelling.
It is incumbent on the defense now to bolster its argument. To explain what possible significance these commonplace articles pawned by this fine citizen could have.
Well, counsel, is your argument in fact demonstrable? Are you able to show proof that the disc or the box are in any tangible way related to this case?
No, What's the matter, Runo? We know that they're related, don't we? They're both vital pieces of evidence.
Yes, of course, you and I both know that. We know McGilded's true character, and we know the disc is significant, even if we don't know why. But if we explain all that to the court at this point, we have to acknowledge that McGilded's acquittal 2 months ago was a mistake. That the defense's argument was flawed, based on false information.
Oh no.
And that would mean admitting that Gina committed perjury.
But Ginny...
Could it be that Van Zieks knows? Is that why he's doing this now? Because he's anticipated everything?
But maybe... This could be a great opportunity for us.
Sorry? What do you mean, Iris?
Well, what is it that you always say, Runo? Sooner or later, the truth comes out. Every time.
Alright. The exact significance of the things that McGilded deposited with Mr. Windybank is something that only Gina can explain to the court. But if I put her on the stand to testify about that, it could critically damage our chances of winning this case. What's the right thing to do here? My lord, the defense would like to make a proposal.
Oh, what proposal, counsel?
While the court awaits the arrival of Mr. McGilded's small box, I would like to call the defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade, to the witness stand.
The defendant? To what end?
It's to do with the various articles deposited at Windybanks by Mr. McGilded, my lord. Miss Lestrade has information relating to them. I believe it would be beneficial for the court to hear what she has to say. It will prove the significance of the articles in question once and for all.
Well, well, things are becoming interesting. I presume you've considered the implications of the testimony you're proposing? In particular, the impact it will have on the accused's standing, and indeed your own?
I have.
Lord Van Zieks, would you care to explain that last remark?
The prosecution accepts the defense's proposal. I move to interrupt the cross-examination of the current witnesses and hear from the accused herself.
Very well, if you have no objection. So, the court will now hear the testimony of the defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade. You witnesses currently in the stand may step down until further notice.
Then I shall bid you good day. Wait. You, sir, shall remain in the stand while Miss Lestrade testifies. As you wish. Alright then, Gina, it's time. I know this will be hard, but please, put your faith in me here.
Good luck, Runo. The articles that Mr. McGilded had deposited in Windybank's pawnbrokery are intimately related with the omnibus case, the trial of which was heard in the courtroom 2 months ago.
Yes, and if I remember this young lady being brought before me in that trial as well.
That's right, my lord. Her testimony helped to establish the innocence of the defendant, Mr. McGilded.
The omnibus case was intriguing, to say the least. And now here we all are again, the same players in that trial facing each other once more. A twist of fate, perhaps, my Nipponese friend.
Allow me to recap the events of 2 months ago. An old brickmaker was stabbed to death in an omnibus running along London's winter streets. Apart from the victim, there was only one other person in the carriage, Mr. McGilded. Naturally, he was the prime suspect of the murder. But as the trial progressed, another possibility emerged. That the murder, in fact, took place above the defendant's head on the roof deck, with the body then being dropped through the skylight into the carriage below. It was Miss Lestrade whose testimony brought that possibility to light. At the time of the incident, Miss Lestrade was concealed under a seat in the carriage, hoping to pick the pockets of unsuspecting passengers. Then, immediately after the trial, having been acquitted of the murder, Mr. McGilded died in this very courtroom in the most extraordinary of circumstances.
A mystery that remains unsolved even now, 2 months on. As indeed does the omnibus murder itself.
Be that as it may, I recall neither the disc nor this small box being mentioned in the course of those proceedings.
Miss Lestrade? Won't you tell the court now, please? What really happened in the omnibus 2 months ago, I mean? I don't know what you mean. I already said all of what I know. And what about everything you told us yesterday from inside your prison cell? Please, Miss Lestrade. This is extremely important. But...
Remember, little girl, if it transpires that you willfully withheld information in the trial 2 months ago, the Home Office will seek to prosecute you for perjury. And naturally, you will lose all credibility as a witness. Although, let's face facts, you have little credibility to lose.
Ginny, don't listen to him. Please, you have to trust Runa now. Iris, we're on your side. Alright then. I'll talk.
It's the right choice, Gina. Well, it would seem that my learned friend is hell-bent on bringing the entire courtroom down about his ears. So be it.
I must confess that I'm struggling to understand what on earth is happening here. However, it would appear that Mr. McGilded's pawned articles and that extraordinary case of the omnibus harbour secrets of which we have been hitherto unaware. So, Miss Lestrade, you will now give your testimony before the court about the events of 2 months ago. You will reveal the truth, a commodity sorely lacking in your original statements.
This is it then. Everything's going to come out. Like Van Zeke said. This could bring the whole courtroom down about my ears, but as a lawyer, I'm prepared to take that risk. Truth is, that brickmaker co was in the cabin of the omnibus the whole time. When the Irishman dragged me out from under the seat, I saw that disc on the floor. All of a sudden I heard a scream from over my head, and that pair on the roof deck went off to call the schlops. And that's when McGill had slipped the driver some tin to do a run to the pawn shop roundabout. He threatened me not to snitch, not to say nothing to no one about what I'd seen or heard.
Good grief, this is outrageous. What you've just told the court bears almost no resemblance to your testimony 2 months ago.
As you say, my lord.
Then there's every chance I may have adjudicated an error in McGilded's trial. Sounds very much to me as if the man deliberately deceived this court in an effort to cover up the most wicked of schemes.
Without doubt, your lordship is correct. A great injustice was done in this courtroom 2 months ago. The actions of the accused in that trial, of this witness, and of my learned friend are entirely inexcusable.
Don't believe it. The whole trial was a farce. It was all lies. That McGilded fellow was rotten to the core, just like that pickpocket. Don't forget that lawyer from the east. They were all in and out together. You're wrong, the lot of you. Mr. Naruto, the lawyer there, he didn't know nothing about it.
Humbug.
I don't think so. Are we really expected to believe that?
He really stitched everyone up, didn't he? What an operation to get the man off scot-free.
Unforgivable. Stop. The lies have to stop. Stop.
Yes, the defense made a terrible error of judgment. I intend to take full responsibility and suffer whatever consequences are deemed appropriate. However, it's imperative that the court allows the witness to elaborate on her testimony, because the true significance of McGilded's pawned articles must be brought to light.
Very well, my learned student friend. Given the depths of calamity you have just plunged yourself into, this may be well worth hearing. Words fail me. This situation is utterly deplorable. Mr. Naruhodo.
Yes, my lord?
I will decide upon your fate following the conclusion of this trial.
Of course, my lord.
I mean, Mr. Naruto.
Now, Consul, please proceed with the cross-examination. Ugh.
Hold it!
And you were hiding in the cabin at the time as well, weren't you, Miss Lestrade? If I remember rightly, in the storage compartment underneath one of the seats.
Yeah, that's right. It's pitch black under there, so you can't see nothing at all.
Now, in your testimony 2 months ago, I feel certain that you claim Mr. McGilded was the sole passenger, did you not?
False testimony, my lord.
That's what he told me I had to say.
But it's important that you tell us the truth now. Were Mr. McGilded and the victim acquaintances?
I don't know. But I did hear him talking a lot.
What were they talking about?
Well, I couldn't hear too well, but if I had to say, I think it was about money or something. They kept talking about buying and not buying.
Perhaps business dealings of some kind?
Well, anyway, I got louder and louder. It started to sound like a proper fight. I was pretty scared by then. I hardly dared to breathe, and then all of a sudden, I heard a noise like someone keeling over on the floor. It was blooming loud and all.
And I believe you let out an involuntary scream.
Yeah, that's what gave me away.
Hold it!
Was the disc you saw this disc?
Yeah, I reckon it probably was.
What are you two doing?
Excuse me.
Is there something you'd like to share with the court, Inspector Gregson and Mr. Graydon? Inspector! Mr. Graydon!
Ah, blimey, you trying to give me a heart attack?
You've been whispering to each other for quite some time now. Tell us, what is the discussion about?
A discussion? With this fella? Pull the other one, sunshine. You think I've got anything to talk about with a shady gent like this?
And I have nothing to say to this uncouth detective after he deprived me of that disc that was rightfully mine. They've clearly been talking the entire time I've been cross-examining Gina. It's as if they've been negotiating.
You will kindly refrain from talking amongst yourselves while the witness is giving testimony. Yes, sorry, my lord.
What are those two talking about?
Miss Lestrade, continue with your testimony, please.
I reckon listen to do proper.
Hold it!
Was the disc you saw this disc?
Yeah, I reckon it probably was. It was right next to the cove lying on the floor.
Could this disc have belonged to the victim, perhaps?
I dunno, but McGill had picked it up pretty smartish. And then he sat the cove with the knife in his belly up on the seat.
What did he say to you at that time?
He told me not to say a word about what I'd seen or heard to no one. About the disc and all. I was dead scared. The way he was looking at me, I thought I didn't go along with it, I'd get stuck with the knife too. Then he started asking me a load of questions. Like what my name was and where I lived and that. He asked me about being a diver too.
But after a while, what had happened in the carriage was noticed.
Yeah, that's right. First there was a kind of rapping noise.
Hold it!
There were two gentlemen occupying the seats on the roof deck, I believe.
That's right. They must have looked down through the skylight and noticed the cove with the knife in his guts. When they screamed, the driver pulled up the horses and McGill got me out of sight.
Out of sight. Where?
Back under the seat where I started off. Once the carriage came to an halt, the two coves from the roof ran off to fetch the slops.
If they immediately left to fetch the police, it would appear they were entirely unrelated to the incident. So that left McGill, the driver, and you still at the scene.
Yeah, only the driver didn't know I was there because I was under the seat. He had the cabin doors open and a voice from outside.
The driver, yes. He also testified in the trial, I believe. A fellow who went by the name of Beppo, if memory serves.
What did what did McGill and the driver say to each other?
I don't know what happened, and stuff like that mainly.
Hold it!
That pawn shop obviously being Windybanks on Baker Street.
Just a moment, counsel. Do you mean to tell me that the driver gave false testimony in that trial as well?
Perhaps the excursion to the pawnbrokery slipped his mind when he was in the stand.
Indeed, Lord Van Zieks.
McGilded took off his coat and gave it to the driver. He folded it up careful like, before handing it over. When I saw him do that, I remembered thinking, that coat and what's in it's all gotta be worth a few bob. Yes, Gina was sure the disc must be worth more than Mr. Windybank was suggesting, wasn't she? I remember her quarrelling with him over the price that afternoon at the pawnbrokery. The driver looked pretty happy when McGilded flashed some brass in his face. He went running off at a lick. Then the bog trotter called to me and told me to come out from the drag's cabin.
Hold it!
Threatened you how exactly? Told me I'd only be able to scalp her if I did exactly what he said.
Which included giving false testimony in court 2 months ago.
Yeah, that's it. And there was one other thing he said.
Which was?
He told me I'd have to hang on to the ticket from the pawn shop and make sure not to lose it.
The ticket? Well, I never.
Said that if he didn't show up to get the ticket off me before 2 months passed, I had to go to the pawn shop and pay the money to keep it in lug to stop it being forfeited. He left me with some brass to pay for it.
But really, why on earth would Mr. McGilded have done such a thing? Depositing his overcoat with a pawnbroker before the arrival of the police. It makes no sense at all.
There would seem to be only one logical explanation, my lord. What McGilded had the driver deposit at Windybanks was something he didn't want the police to see. Something very important that he needed to hide at all costs. Anyway, after that he let me go, so I legged it before the coppers showed up.
Thank you, Miss Lestrade. Thank you, Counsel. I've heard enough. I believe we now have a reasonable understanding of what actually transpired on the omnibus.
It would appear, on the night 2 months ago, a negotiation was taking place on the omnibus. A negotiation concerning this disc. However, matters did not run smoothly. When the parties involved began to quarrel over price, McGilded took what he wanted by force, at the expense of the other man's life.
Which proves my point. The disc is clearly extremely valuable in some way. Though I don't understand why as yet.
And 2 days ago, precisely 2 months after the omnibus incident, McGilded's coat and its contents were due to be forfeited.
I didn't know what I should do with the ticket. I mean, the cove died right after his trial. I knew that.
So you decided you would try to claim the articles as your own.
Well, why not, eh? They were only going to be forfeited. Why shouldn't I have got them? Anyway, you can't blame me for thinking about it. Thinking about it ain't no crime.
Miss Lestrade, it would appear Mr. McGilded was prepared to kill in order to take possession of this disc. Do you know why that would be?
I ain't got a clue. But I reckon it must be worth a fair bit of brass. He was probably going to sell it. And you can't blame me for thinking that. Thinking ain't no crime.
My lord! The evidence your lordship requested has been located and is ready for the court's inspection, sir.
A mysterious little box deposited by McGilded 2 months ago. There's no doubt in my mind that it's a key piece in this far-reaching puzzle.
Ah, okay. That's that part done. God, this trial's going on, isn't it? Anyway, that will be all for now then, and I'll be back in about an hour with Xenoblade.
For now, though, bye.